Okay, and so now I'm going to tell you about how the team did this week. And I wanted to preface it with saying that, yes, we can make AssemblyLink libraries and things usually work. However, so for this week, on Monday, with everyone else, we ground samples in the morning. And then in the afternoon, we did our first round of lysate generation in QC. So we had 5 different samples and 5 people. So everybody got to do a different sample. I'll show you the results on the next slide. But suffice it to say that the yields were quite low, and then the QC was also suboptimal. So on Tuesday, we for some people, they started with proximity ligation with the previous samples, even though that we knew the QC was not optimal, but just for practice. And then we also repeated the lysate generation for 2 of the samples where we had excess ground tissue. In the afternoon, the group went through the library prep with the proximity ligation that they did in the morning. And then in parallel, we repeated for the 2 new samples, the proximity ligation and library prep. So those QCs were also similarly not fabulous. And then on Wednesday, this is totally my fault, I realized that we had in fact sent cell isolation modules, which were recommended for muscly tissues like reindeer heart and spleen and the moose muscle. So Wednesday morning, rather than go through the exercise of PCR cleanup, which everybody has done, we retried lysate generation with the remaining. So we had a herring and the reindeer spleen remaining. And so this time we added collagenase treatment just to see if that would help. So as I said, our first try on Monday, the QCs, which were here, the total nanograms of lysate with the input of the samples, was too low to continue. And here are the traces. So you can see this is, they're way shifted to the right. So they're too big to work with. And so Carmela did the spleen, which was actually the best, and she was the one who had never done this before. So, and then the other observation was the herring that we worked with was very fatty. And so you can see here, this is after binding to the chromatin capture beads, that the herring pellets are very spread out and kind of funky looking compared to the reindeer spleen. So we did a second round, and although there was a bit better yield, we still were not seeing sufficient fragmentation to continue into a successful library. So for the third round, we tried with collagenase, and I apologize, Olga was kind enough to go and take photographs of all of the traces. So these are photographs of a computer. And so what I tried to do here was line everything up so that they kind of match. So we had herring and we had the reindeer spleen, and we either tried it with collagenase with different input amounts or without collagenase, as what we were doing before. So I could say the results are a bit inconsistent and would need to be repeated, but basically what we saw was that there was more yield when we treated the herring with collagenase, but when we were in this 11 milligram input sample, we actually were over digesting, so everything kind of went too far. Whereas for the reindeer spleen, this was with no collagenase. And then if you add collagenase, you see there's an increase in the fragments that are under, this is the 1 kb mark. So, and that's where we want to be, is fragment size under 1 kb is what we can eventually ligate and convert into library. So, and this is just to remind you that This is what I'm used to looking at, but for the bioanalyzer, some of these traces are quite similar to what we just said. We did not do a count of the percent that's underneath the KV, for instance, but for the reindeer spleen, anyways, it seemed like it was going to be a working yield. Okay, so to summarize, sadly, our initial tries with new users was not successful, but I want to thank the team for sticking with me. I was jet lagged and sick and things weren't working and it was a new assay. But thank you for sticking with me and repeating things. So questions, where did we go wrong? Because as I showed you, we know we can make libraries with AssemblyLink out of random samples. So in ethanol, moose muscle and ethanol, I have no expectations that it shouldn't work, but it was our really first try with an ethanol sample. And also because it's a muscle and a mammalian muscle, we should have used collagenase. Same with the reindeer heart and spleen. The herring and krill are both in families of samples we have tested, so fish and crustaceans. So in my testing with fish, we sort of have this thing where if you do something like a fish and it doesn't digest, even though we told you you did not need to collagenase treat it, that you can try treating it, and then in general that will help. But what we do see for samples that don't really need it is you will get higher trans reads because you're kind of helping access your chromatin and maybe too much so. That makes sense. You know, the herring, as I said, was quite a bit fattier than some of the samples we've worked with, but you know, I'm a little surprised that this didn't work at all. So the life state redo on the third day with collagenase significantly improved our spleen profile. That would be a good library prep, but we would still need to do some work on the other samples. So the benefit of the fast workflow made it easier for us to try several redos, but there's definitely a learning curve that we would like to fix for both users and the sample types. So again, thank you for letting me come and try it out anyway. So hopefully the team learned something.